Hello to everyone just joining us. We will start very soon. Please do say hi in the chat, introduce yourself or say where you're joining us from today. We're really pleased to have you here. Okay, and while you do that, I'll just introduce myself. I am Verity. I'm your host for today. I'm also Senior Product Marketing Manager for ScriptRunner for Jira on-premise. This is the Is It Possible webinar, episode 5, and we're excited to have you here. So I'm going to start rolling through the slides and introduce you to some of our team. So on today's panel, we have Maria. She's one of our product marketing managers at ScriptRunner. We have Bobby Bailey, who's our customer success manager. We have Nandish, who's our team lead. Reece, who's our senior software engineer. Nick Brough, who's our senior customer success manager. Wagner, who's our software engineer. And hanging out in the chat, we have Lisa Murray, who's our content marketing manager, and Matthew Clark, who's our software engineer. So that's our team. And just a little bit of housekeeping for you. So everyone is on mute, so please do use the chat function. Don't message direct to individuals on the panel because we won't be able to see it. But please do drop any questions about what we're presenting in the chat, and we'll do our very best to answer what we can in the time. And as always, if you have a question for us for a future session, please do drop it via our official Is It Possible form, and that will hit your inboxes very soon, along with a recording of the session. Okay, and some important news. So Is It Possible is actually going to be moving from a Wednesday to a Thursday. So yeah, that's just a little update there. And the next event is going to be on Thursday, the 10th of August. So that's one for your diaries. So we're going to kick off today's webinar with Reece, who is answering a question: is it possible to send a notification when one of my scripts throws an error? And just point out, we are going to be mixing up today with answering some questions and doing some demos. So we're going to have a mix today. So over to you, Reece.
Thanks, Verity. Let me share my screen. Okay, so the question is around if a script throws an error, throwing an exception is probably a better way to describe it. How can I monitor that? How can I respond to that? Historically, we haven't had an answer for it. The best answer we had was wrap all of your code with try-catch blocks, which doesn't scale, especially if you have hundreds of scripts, and also you don't have consistency. So in ScriptRunner 8.5, the prior release, we introduced a new feature. It's called the execution failure notifier. And what this is it's a new type of listener. So you configure it the same way that you'd configure any other listener. The only difference is that you don't configure events for this. It has events built in, and it's triggered whenever a script anywhere in ScriptRunner for Jira throws an exception. So this will catch those kinds of failures that would show up in execution history as red. And that happens when an exception is thrown from the script. It's worth pointing that out because if you've got existing try catches in your script and you're not rethrowing the exception, this wouldn't trigger. So you might need to make some code changes for that. So I've built a simple example here in a test instance. And what I have is a couple of listeners. So I have this new execution failure notifier, but I also have a custom listener. And all this custom listener is doing is it's listening for the issue created event, and then it's throwing a runtime exception. Now, this isn't what would typically happen in your code. You'd likely be doing some kind of operation, and the exception is thrown just through error, not because you've inherently thrown it, but this works as a good example. So if I save or update this, you'll see it has some existing execution failures, saying something went wrong. And this is going to happen every time that I create an issue, because it's bound to the issue created event. So what I'd like to do is, in my instance, whenever any script throws an exception, I want to respond to that. So this is what the execution failure notifier does, which is new. It's very basic. You can give it a note to describe what it does, and then you have a editor. And what you have in here, if you look in the binding by clicking the little blue question mark, you have an event. It's an execution failure event. This is an event from inside of ScriptRunner, and it's new. And what this event gives you is some details of what went wrong. So you have things like the feature name. So was this a job? Was it a listener, etc.? You have the URL. So this will give you the actual URL of the script configuration that failed. This is really handy if you want to send a notification and then click on a link, for example, and go straight to the config. You also get the stack trace. So where was the stack at the point that the exception was thrown? And you have the exception message in there inherently. So in this example, what we want to do is whenever a script execution fails, we want to send a Slack notification. So to do that, we're using our existing Slack integration via resources, which is Slack util. If I go into the resources tab here, you'll see that I have a Slack connection. This is just set up in the typical way using our resources feature. You can find out how to do this in the documentation. It's fairly straightforward. However, there's nothing specific about Slack here. So you're writing a script, you can do anything here. So you could send a Slack message, you could send an email, you could kick off a REST request to an external service, some kind of centralized monitoring. The world is your oyster here. We didn't want to be too prescriptive. So we could have just had a Slack notifier, but then what if you want to customize that? What if I only want to send notifications in certain cases? What if I want to send them to multiple systems? Those kinds of things. So effectively, this code runs whenever something fails. So I'm going to hit update on this. And what I have over here is a Slack workspace. So it's just got an empty channel for ScriptRunner notifications. This is quite a common ask, is just to pump all failures into Slack, because a lot of people use Slack. And again, my custom listener, it's going to throw an exception anytime I create an issue. So if I hit create here and just say hello, click update. And if I refresh this page, you can see I now have 4 failing executions. So something went wrong and that just ran. And if I come over to Slack, I have a message. It says ScriptRunner notifications. That's just what I've named the app in this case. The way you set it up is you create a custom Slack app. You can give it a name, you can give it an icon, do whatever you want. And then we have the message here. So something went wrong in a custom listener. There were no notes attached to that listener at the time. And then you have a link. So this is really handy. So I can click through this and go straight to the configuration that's at fault. And this will work regardless of which feature you're in. And then the error, which is just the stack trace derived from the event. Of course, because it's just a script, you can customize all of this. This just happens to be what we have by default in here. So this is just a Groovy string, customize it to your liking. Obviously, in this case, we're using Slack. Maybe you'd be sending an email. You could use custom HTML, etc., etc. Right. So the feature is called Execution Failure Notifier. It's available now as of ScriptRunner 8.5, I believe. And we're continuing to enhance this. So in an upcoming release, one of the things that's missing right now is, say, this is a issue event listener. So there's an issue attached to that. Right now in this script binding, you can't get at the issue. We're going to rectify that in a future release so that you have access to the binding at the time that the exception was thrown. So you can do things like reference the issue key in your messages.
Thank you, Reece. Slides. Perfect. Thank you. So we're now going to have a demonstration from Nandish, who's going to go through a Bitbucket demo. It's a new feature. It's merge check requiring all comments to be resolved. So over to you, Nandish.
Yep. So this is something that we worked on in the last release. So Bitbucket 8.9 introduced a new feature wherein you can resolve the comments on a pull request. So I have a pull request page open here. So I'll open one of the existing pull requests and I can look at the diffs, and normally you can basically put any comments on the pull request. So for example, you could, provide comments on a pull request. Now, starting 8.9 version of Bitbucket, they introduced this resolve functionality wherein the reviewers of the pull request can mark any of the comments as resolved when they think that their comments have been acted upon. So they can mark this as comment and it will show up as resolved, but there's nothing stopping the pull request owner to merge the pull request without actioning them. So for example, if they had a comment, they could still merge the pull request without actioning or providing clarification on the comments that have been in their pull request. And it is quite normal for pull requests to be quite big and go through a number of iterations, and your comments to be lost in that multiple iterations. So you might have put a comment on the first iteration asking why you have chosen this strategy, and then somebody has updated the code multiple times, and your comment then falls through the loop. So what we want is an ability to stop the merge before all the comments on a pull request have been resolved. So we have introduced a new merge check in ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. You can access that via the merge checks tab, and it is require all comments are resolved. You can specify a note, and you can also choose which project this applies to. So it's not necessary that you want it applied to all the projects and all the repositories. You can choose all the projects and repositories that need that enforcing. In this case, just for example, I'll choose all projects. You can also specify a condition. So for example, you want some checks to be this merge check to work only on certain branches. So for example, when you're only merging to master, you want all your comments to be resolved, or there are some branching naming conventions that you follow. For example, for more sensitive changes or something, you can put your conditions in here. Just to keep it simple, we won't add any conditions. Once you've added it, and because we have added it to all the projects, if I go back to my previous pull requests, I can see that because I had a comment, it says that the merge button is disabled, and it asks the user to resolve the thread first. So if I resolve it, then it will allow you to merge, so that you can be confident that all the comments that are put in the PR are acted upon and have been resolved. This will help teams enforce policies around requiring all the comments to be resolved. They can also have that enforced. That's it. I hope this is helpful, and happy to have any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Nandish. Okay. Right, next up, we're back to Reece, who's going to give us a HAPi update. So over to you, Reece.
Thanks, Verity. Just let me share my screen. Okay, so HAPi, which we launched earlier in the year, it's our new scripting feature. Effectively, the goal is to try and bring Jira automation to anybody. And the way we achieve that is by simplifying the code that you write and providing you drastically simple APIs for interacting with Jira. So for more information about HAPi, scriptrunnerhq.com/HAPi is the place to go. I'm just going to give a brief insight into where we're going soon. So as an example of things HAPi can do, it can help you search for issues of JQL with simplified syntax via this issues.search API. So this is great, but this is a new API. Customers have hundreds of scripts, maybe even thousands. I've seen thousands. So it can be quite hard to address how to migrate scripts over to HAPi. You don't have to migrate scripts to HAPi because the old Java APIs still work. But there are some benefits, specifically in this case with JQL searching, in terms of performance and how the HAPi APIs handle things. So one of the customer asks that we've had is, help me look in my existing scripts for opportunities to potentially use HAPi. There's nothing forcing you to do that. We just want to give a little bit of a hint as to what you could potentially do. So as an example, I'm here in the script console. So this is the JQL search API from HAPi. However, the way that you traditionally do this is using Jira's Java API and search service. So I have a script console script here that's doing that. So all this code is doing is running a JQL and then returning the issue keys. And it's using the search service from Atlassian for that. But what you might notice here is there's a little hovering blue line. And what this is it's the new HAPi linter. So the HAPi linter is going to do a bunch of different things. One of the things it's going to do is validate the values that you're using within HAPi. So if you have a project key or a username, etc., if you've got an invalid value, we're going to highlight that in line in the editor at the time that you're writing the script. The other thing that it does is it gives you suggestions for alternative APIs. So in this case, I'm using search service.search. If I hover over the blue line, I see a little message that this code, it could be simplified using issues.search from HAPi. And there's a link here. If I click on this, it will take me through to the relevant documentation. And the idea of this is when you're working in existing scripts, maybe scripts that you've had for years, you'll have subtle hints that, hey, there's an equivalent HAPi API for this Jira API. We're only going to do this in places where HAPi can exactly achieve the same thing. So in the case of search service, the HAPi version of that API has identical support, including opting out of permission checks, etc. So there's no real downside to using the HAPi version here. However, there are upsides. So if you look at this code, there's a lot of code, obviously, but there's some subtle things, such as the unlimited pager filter. What this means is that when you do the JQL search, say you have 1 million issues, what you're doing is you're loading all the matches up to Jira's JQL limit into memory at once, and then you're operating on them. However, if you use the HAPi version, e.g. issues.search, this is actually done lazily with pagination, and you're given each issue back incrementally. So it has less memory usage, it has less of a performance overhead. So there is a benefit to using HAPi in this case, other than the simpler code. So this linter, it's going to be an opt-out. So there's going to be a toggle in settings to turn it off, and that'll be configurable per user. So you can disable it for yourself without impacting other admins. It's there as an assist. If you don't like it, you'll be able to turn it off. And the goal is that we're only going to use it in places where HAPi is equivalent to the Jira API. So it shouldn't be too intrusive. This is probably going to ship, I don't know, the next few releases. That seems like an accurate assessment. And then we're going to keep advancing this over time. So we're going to start linting for more APIs where there's an equivalent. Initially, it's just going to be a few APIs to see how things go. And I'm keen for feedback after that.
Thank you, Reece. And if you do have any HAPi questions, Reece is in the chat, so please do reach out for him or any of our other panelists. They're also hanging out there to answer any questions. So go back. Okay, next up, we've got a question which actually came in on the Atlassian community. So, is it possible to change an existing association of a Jira user from the internal user directory to another one, e.g. ms-ad based one on a single user base via a Groovy script without manually editing the underlying DB? The built-in functionality Atlassian provides does only work for all users of a user DIR, which is not intended for only a few users to be changed. I think, Nick, are you answering this one?
Yes, and it's going to be a very, very quick answer because it's no. There is no functionality in Jira for actually moving a user from one directory to another. It's actually when you use the built-in functions that change an entire user base from one directory to another, it's actually changing the underlying directory information. You can't just shift people across easily. The only way to do it is with modifying the database. And when you do it, you need to be very, very careful that you modify it in all the right places. It's not just one place. So yeah. ScriptRunner used to have a built-in function that enabled you to swap everything that a user had done from one record to another, which would be useful if you're going to do this. But no, I'm afraid there's no way of actually writing a script that can do this. You need to go in and edit the database directly.
All right, thank you, Nick.
Told you it's going to be quick.
But it was a quick one, but it's good for everyone to know that we do, please do share your questions that you would like to have us answer at Futures if possible. But we do also, of course, answer questions through Atlassian community around ScriptRunner. So yes, we answer them in all places. So please keep asking them. And our next question, is it possible to create a Jira issue automatically when a Confluence page is changed? We usually write product requirement docs on a Confluence page, and I want to track its changes, creating new Jira tickets automatically to respond it. Is there any way?
So yes, so I'm answering this.
Thank you, Bobby.
So yes, it is possible through our new tool called Stitch It. So I'm just going to share screen now.
Perfect, thank you.
Share this screen. So you should see Stitch It now, is that right?
Yep. Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So just so everyone's aware, Stitch It is a new tool that we have produced. So it's not ScriptRunner or a new feature in ScriptRunner. It's a new tool in of itself. That is it's an integration platform as a service. What this means is that we've built this tool to allow you to create connections between the different tools in your software ecosystem quickly and easily, so that you can write code and custom business logic between those tools to really get your system fully integrated and working as one whole unit. So we do that via a couple of features, which I'm just going to show you now. And I'm going to show you the question working. So the first feature we use is called our managed connections feature. And this allows us to connect to the tools that we're going to be using, so that we can, we'd have to worry about passwords, tokens, authentication when we're writing our business logic. So you can see here that I've connected to Jira Data Center and Confluence on-prem. So I've got my connections pre-set up, but you can go through this, go and select the tool and go through the process to create your connections to any of these tools that you need to, as well as any tool with a HTTP-based REST API with the generic connector. Next, we're going to go to workspaces. So the workspace I'm going to go to is PRD monitoring on-prem. So workspaces are where you will create your integrations. So for our business use case, which is we're monitoring a page on Confluence, and when that changes, we want to go and raise a ticket in our Jira instance. So what we do is we create an event listener here that hooks up to Confluence on-prem and listens for those events. When we listen to that event, so I've configured it here, it will go and execute this script, which we've created here. We're telling that workspace that we are going to be using our Confluence connection and our Jira Data Center connection. So we're going to be communicating with both of those APIs, and we're writing a script here that goes and does that for us. So when we detect a Confluence change on premise, we execute this script. The first thing this script does is it gets the page ID from the event itself, so the information that Confluence has sent to us, and it goes and gets the full page information, because Confluence doesn't send that information by default. We double check the space that it exists in. If it is in PRD, then we know that a PRD document has changed. We're going to go and access the Jira API. Two seconds, sorry. I don't know why that is happening. Okay, sorry, let me just reshare. You should now be seeing the Stitch It instance again, right?
Yes, we can.
Cool, yeah. So we use the Jira API to get the project, the correct project and that ID. We also use the Jira API to get the correct ID for the issue type, so PRD change. And then here we use the Jira on-premise REST API to go and create a ticket for us. So you can see here we use the IDs and we give the summary saying that this page title has been changed and the version number that it's currently on is now this. So let's see it in action. So I've got a PRD, well, not really a PRD document here, but I've got a Confluence page. If I go and make a change here and I click update, I can go back to Confluence and we can see that the log is starting to process here, and we can see that it's gone through and it's executed, as well as outputting some of my console log debug, so that we can see what's going on. And now I can go to my Jira instance where I've currently got 3 versions of this ticket, press enter, and we can see, well, Another one's been made here telling us that a PRD document has been changed. This is me testing about 30 seconds ago. But this one here is the one I've just run, telling me that there's been a change to this document and we're now on version 10 and we can go through. Now, the important thing to know about Stitcher is it's totally custom scripting. So the same concept as ScriptRunner. You can write code to do any business logic you want. So we can extract more information, such as who was the author, raise them as a participant of the ticket, and do anything essentially that the REST APIs of Viva Tools will allow us to do. And it's also important to note that it's not limited to one direction in terms of integration. It can be made to be bi-directional. I can modify this workspace now to also listen for when the PRD change issue type has been gone to either approved or rejected, and then go back into Confluence and make changes there, either reverting to a previous version or leaving a note or comments. So you can actually have a full system that goes back and forth between different tools using your Stitcher solution. And that's the answer to that question is yes, you can with Stitcher.
Perfect. Great, thank you, Bobby. Okay. On to the next one. So carrying on with the Stitch It theme, we're actually going to have a demonstration from Maria about making the most of Stitch It's integration hub. And this is Maria's first Is It Possible? So let's give her a warm welcome. So over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Verity. Let me share my screen 1 second. Can you see my screen fine?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you again. So I'm Maria, the product marketing manager for Stitch It. And yeah, following up from Bobby's demo, I wanted to give you like an overview and a few tips on how to use Stitch It efficiently and just get your integrations and your syncs done quickly and easily. So Stitch It, as a little reminder, is a code-based integration tool that focuses on the Atlassian ecosystem of apps. It's a standalone integration app as opposed to an add-on or an add-on that you can download from the Atlassian marketplace. And it's meant for complex integrations, really. It sits in the middle of systems, so you can connect it to, there's no limit to what you can connect with the Stitch It. And yeah, so without further ado, let me get started with the dashboard. So once you have logged in, by the way, anybody can create an account for free with the Stitch It and test it out. You land on the dashboard that is divided into 3 sections. So in the dashboard, we cover our most used templates. They are very useful to get started quickly. Your account usage, because Stitch It is still in beta, this is disabled, so it's like grayed out, but it will be available soon. And a link to our knowledge base where you can explore how-to articles and more technical information about Stitch It features. Probably the most interesting thing about the dashboard is these 2 banners at the top. So for people that have just created the account for the first time, I would always recommend them to follow the step-by-step setup. So to do so, you click here on continue, and this will take you from the creation of your workspace to the configuration of the different elements on the resource manager that we will get to in a second. So you will click on start, fill out the name of your workspace, add an optional description. And if you have a team or want to collaborate with anybody on your organization, you want this workspace to be part of a team. In order to create a team, this can be done after the creation of the workspace, of course. You can do so from the left menu under Teams, and also add anybody you want to invite to your team and workspace in team. So because we have already created an example workspace, I'm going to cancel the step-by-step setup. great thing about this is that if you want to come back to it at any point, you can click on the little wizard here in the corner, or you can close it like I'm gonna do now. So let's head over the workspaces. We're going to be using this example workspace I have shared with a colleague of mine. And before we get into the UI, I wanted to let you know what a workspace is. So you might have guessed where it is by now. But it's essentially the place where your scripts live, where you build them, run them, and deploy them. So starting from the top left, you can switch easily workspace from this drop-down menu. You can also, I mean, nothing forces you to, but if you wanted to build or create multiple environments to test your scripts before getting them into production, you can do so. But you can also operate from the default environment if you wish to do that. This workspace lives on the team collaboration MV, as I mentioned before, that I have shared with my colleague. If you were to, or if you wanted to actually share or change the share settings and share with all members the workspace of your team, or with admins only, you can do so from here. In this case, my colleague and I are both admins, so the tabs don't change when selected. Let's go into the resource manager. So the resource manager starts with a README, which is incredibly useful when working with several people on a workspace. We have a link here, a markdown guide, in case you want to add a heading, bullet points, or make it more sophisticated. We actually rely on the README a lot for the templates to explain its usage and the setup as well. So you can easily follow the instructions to get your integration ready and your scripts working. So on to the next section, that is precisely the scripts. In this workspace we have created here, we're trying to post a message to Slack every time a Jira issue is created or updated. So actually we have built two events. So this is an integration script between Jira Cloud and Slack, and this is a standalone Slack script that simply posts a message to Slack. Another tip here, when you are building your script in TypeScript, something I forgot to mention at the start, but I'll go into it in a second, is that the editor operates in JavaScript and TypeScript, but TypeScript is the default language. The reason for that is because that way you can take advantage of the assisted coding environment and use the shortcuts and get to autocomplete suggestions, get recommendations for syntax errors if they happen while you're typing your script, import suggestions, etc. So just to give you a little demonstration of what I mean. So if you were to type control space in the brackets when you were trying to import these two events, the editor would give you a drop-down of all the events that are available on Jira Cloud that you can import given this context here, which is very useful, and it gets you quickly to what you want while you're scripting. So let's move into the next section, which is API connections. So API connections make API calls to external services. In this case, we have configure an API connection to our Slack instance to be able to connect Jira Cloud to Slack and to post this Slack message here. If you wanted to add, by the way, a script, API connection, even listener, schedule trigger, the only thing you would need to do is click on the plus button next to the name. In this case, if you click on the plus button, you'll find all the API connections you can include in your script. As Bobby mentioned before, we have available a generic connector that allows you to include any application with an HTTP API. If we don't have the connector available, that is very handy. Event listeners allow you to listen to events that are triggered by external services. And in this case here, we have configure one for issue to listen to issues created and updated in Jira Cloud. If you were to click on the play button, either in the scripts or on the event listeners, you would trigger them and test, run the scripts in the case of the scripts. And lastly, we have schedule triggers, which allow you to run a script on a schedule as opposed to manually. So if I were to click on the play button here, I would be running each script manually. As an example, we have used the post to Slack a script here to be run every Monday. This is something that can be changed or even deleted if you wish to do so. So at the bottom of the code editor, we have the console where you can, all the updates on the scripts and changes on the resource manager get logged, and you can clear at any point to read things through in an easier way. I have a very small screen, so it's very useful for me in particular. So before we go into the, wrap it up and go into the support resources, I wanted to show you a few advanced features that are very useful here when you're scripting your business logic. So if you click on these three buttons here, you can edit the name of the workspace, create a deployment every time. I mean, you can run your scripts without creating a deployment, but if you prefer to create a deployment, that will allow you to then make any changes on the script without that deployment being affected. You can also switch scripted languages. What I mentioned before, TypeScript is the default one, so you can get all the benefits of autocomplete suggestions, syntax checking, and import suggestions. And the package manager, which allow you to import third-party packages from NPM, JavaScript packages, and add unverified NPM packages that you use normally when scripting your integrations. You can also include any of our core packages or manage APIs by simply checking the box here and saving your changes. Before we finish this demonstration, I wanted to show you that if you need any support from the team itself, or from the our official support team, you can click here and access easily our Slack community, our support portal, or documentation portal. We also have a very useful YouTube library with plenty of demos and tips for users. And if you happen to have any suggestion for features, connectors, or templates, you can leave those on our note board here. I think Lisa has posted a link to the website page and to the app if you want to learn more or create an account. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to submit those on the chat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move swiftly on. Thank you. Okay, so the next one is a question. Can we use ScriptRunner for Jira to find all projects where a certain Jira group is permissioned? And Wagner, I think this one's been answered by you.
Hey, hello everybody. I hope everyone can see my screen. Thanks, Jesse, for bringing the question. And so I think it's worth mentioning that the words group and permission can lead to different interpretations. So I'd like to share what we understand from that. So first of all, I'm going to the list of projects. Let me access a project and settings. So here in permissions, I can have different things, permission to groups, rows, or to a single user. So this is what we understand from that. So I can have, for example, the permission of browse projects associated to the group Jira users. I can also have a permission that's associated to a role. So if I go to users and roles, I can see that I have this row administrators, and it is formed by a group. So they can have one or more groups or users here. So in this case, I have the Jira administrators associated to the row administrator. So yeah, we can have lots of different things here. So different users can have access to different things in Jira, which makes total sense. So how we can do that, how we can retrieve the information of which projects are using this. So we can go to ScriptRunner console, and I have created this script where we can do that. So let me quickly explain that. I added a group picker, so we can add the desired group here, in this case, Jira users. Here we have a couple of Jira APIs that are necessary for that. My resulting list. So I might iterating through all projects. So for every project, I'm looking for rows, so I can see which actors are added for that given role. As we saw, that the role of administrators had the group Jira administrators. So this is what we will find here. And finally, for every permission that is associated to that project, we can see if it's associated to the role or to the group. So if our group is directly associated to that permission, or if it's associated to a role that is associated to the permission, it will be returned here. So what we can see is that, let me run the script. So I can see that the group Jira users is associated to the project that I just shared, because it has one permission granted to the group Jira users. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Wagner. Okay. And we're pretty much coming to the end. I just had a couple more slides. I think I'm not sure that one's happening, so I'm just moving on. ScriptRunner Tour. You may have seen us. We've been on tour to North America, Canada, and Europe. So here are some pictures we took past. You'll notice Reece was there. He gave some great HAPi demos, and we received some great feedback from everyone attended. So it was really great to get out there and meet some of our users. And exciting news is that ScriptRunner Tour is continuing on one more stop. It's coming to London on Wednesday, the 21st of September. So yeah, we're really excited to meet anyone who can make it to London. We're going to be sending out an email about it, and also keep an eye on our socials where you'll be able to sign up to that. So yeah, really excited about that. Very quickly, we had a HAPi feedback survey. So if anyone's using HAPi or yet to use HAPi, we just want to get some thoughts from you. So there's a quick promise. It's only about 4 minutes long, so it won't take long, but we'd love to hear your thoughts. So we will drop that in the chat as well. All the resources related to today's session, they've either been dropped in this chat, or we are going to follow up as usual with a copy of the recording of the webinar and all the links to the resources there. So we made it. It was really exciting. Some brilliant demos and questions answers today. So I just want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. It was great to see you. We will see you next time on a Thursday. And so we look forward to seeing you there, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.